Okay. So the title of this presentation is Valuable Lessons Learned from COVID: How to Support Your Loved One's Care from Afar. And the subtitle is Transforming Tragedy into Strategy. I've thought about changing the title on this, and I'm open to suggestions because we are moving away from COVID, and it was such an incredibly hard time that I think there are many of us who just want to move beyond it and put it in the rear view mirror, or just put those hard times behind us. So if you have other ideas for titling this, but the important thing actually is that COVID did teach us to be more sensitive to the fact that patients are alone. They were alone. Many patients were alone before COVID, and there are patients that are alone to this day. So what can we do, whether it's a family member or friend, and we're a care partner to them on an informal basis, or you are acting as an advocate yourself for somebody who is on their own in the hospital. And as we all know, as advocates, it would be probably cost prohibitive for most people to have you there by their side. But there are strategies in this presentation that you can employ as a professional advocate. And then, of course, when you're presenting to your audiences, you will be talking to them as care partners and for their family and friends. But I wanted to just sort of bring up those two really kind of slightly different audiences for the information here. And also, I should say, this deck arose out of some really great discussions that we had in our speaker network that first terrible summer of COVID, when advocates were scrambling and doing what they do best, which is being creative and figuring out how to get over, under, and around the obstacles of getting good information to support their clients or their clients' family members when nobody could go into hospitals. And so we gathered, and we were just very candid. People were saying, well, I've tried this and I've tried that. And so that's where we came together during that terrible time to create something really useful. So kudos to our task force and all the good work that they've done, starting with this. Since then, of course, I think you probably know the task force has done some amazing work in developing other content for the Care Partner Project checklist library. So the next slide, as you know, is always the one that you customize with your name, your photo, and your thank you to the host. The third slide is always a nod to the Care Partner Project. And with all of the decks, there's script for every one of the slides, or almost. Some slides are just self-explanatory, but for many slides, there's script. And as we've said before, you can follow that if you wish, but there is absolutely no need to memorize it. Pick out the key points that you want to cover and put them into your own words. The plan today is always very interesting to people. They kind of want to know how much time are we going to spend together and what's coming up. This particular presentation can be done in about 30 minutes. Of course, it's entirely up to you. You may want to present more slowly. You may want to interject some stories of your own to illustrate key points. But you have, but this is kind of a good, rough estimate of it's shorter than many of the other decks. So just keep that in mind when you're scheduling. When you have somebody who wants you to come and talk and they say, we have 30 minutes for you, okay, this one can be done. And frankly, I can't imagine there are too many people with whom this would not resonate. Um, we live in, a culture where families are dispersed geographically. It doesn't mean you don't care. It just means that you can't get on a plane, you can't leave a job, you can't leave kids when your mom or dad is in the hospital. But there are ways, as we'll show you today, of when you actually can be there remotely in a significant way. So our goals here for medical care, and this is speaking, I think, for all advocates, is that when people are alone, they're not lonely. And when they are alone, they are fully supported. So one of the things that we talked about, and you'll notice the first point is that that COVID actually, for all of its terribleness, there were some positives, some progress in healthcare, apart from the fact that, vaccines were developed at warp speed. But the good change is that all of us are much smarter about germs. We understand that the number one way to prevent viruses and infections is hand washing, which is very simple. And we have, I think, had a pretty long memory that that hand washing is critical, and that hand washing habits have actually been changed as a result of COVID. And also, as we know from the experience of COVID, that the hand washing has affected the incidence of colds and flus. So we're seeing a lower incidence of colds and flus since the COVID crisis. Was a good reminder that good old-fashioned soap and water go a long way towards protecting us from going under the weather. Another good change from COVID is that we've learned to be active in our care. We've learned to ask questions. We are not passive patients anymore. We have the expectations that we are partners in our care. All in all, we are much smarter. And everybody in your audiences, I'm sure, will relate to that we are smarter. Last but not least, in our care culture, we have developed empathy, gratitude, and compassion for all of the staff, both medical and non-medical, that support care in hospitals. And we have a deeper understanding of all that they're juggling and all of their hard work. As you all know, that at the Care Partner Project, we work really, really hard to be respectful of our care providers, that even though there are times that all of us may express frustration about, some of the lapses in care that we see, we do not put them at the feet of the doctors and nurses and other medical workers. We tend to think of these as system failures. So we are always grateful for those individuals working in those systems that are stressed. So as a way to sort of prepare to help support your loved one from afar, we go into this on this first section about the critical information and documents to have on hand. Ideally, families will prepare in advance, but that doesn't mean that these documents can't be gathered even in the moment. What's important is to know that anybody, say the daughter's in California and dad is in the hospital in New Jersey, her ability to communicate with staff may be limited because she doesn't have certain documents in place. Not necessarily, not always, not 100% of the time, but just to be on the safe side, it's important to at least know that some barriers could be placed in front of being able to monitor your loved one's care from afar. So it's really, really important that all the medical records are available in electronic formats. And so that means knowing the electronics, the logins for the electronic medical records, the usernames and passwords, especially medication records, and having access to the notes in the electronic portals. As many of you know, I think I'm preaching to the choir, that it's really important to have all of these records in a medical binder as well. And this is where advocates are especially effective and helpful, because we all know that those electronic medical records are not usually talking to each other. So say your dad lives in New Jersey, but was on vacation in Florida and ends up in the hospital in Florida. And I can tell you this for a fact, if he's at the Cleveland Clinic in Florida, the Cleveland Clinic really does not talk to very many other hospitals. So what are you going to do? It's coordinating that information is not going to, hopefully not going to fall to the family member. It's going to, to the patient, it's going to fall to their nearest and dearest, or to a professional patient advocate to get all of their records together. The Cleveland Clinic in Florida, and I know this from firsthand experience actually, they will make calls to try to get access to those records, but honestly, things fall through the cracks there. They are super busy, and they seem to have a very high rate of turnover. So all of these are potential disasters, and having the records at your fingertips and how to access them, how to get them where they need to be, is huge. And I'm sure you can actually, with your audiences, have stories and be able to speak to this even more. So making sure that the legal permissions are in place so that medical care providers can actually talk to you as your mom or dad's care partner, again, while you're in California and dad is in Florida or New Jersey. It's important that the forms that are used, however, to grant access, to allow the medical care providers to act in compliance with HIPAA, is that you need to download those forms and use the forms in the state where your loved one lives. I honestly don't know what the situation is like, again, if dad's in Florida on vacation or as a snowbird and New Jersey is his home base. My guess is it's good enough to download download the New Jersey forms and have those at your fingertips, especially if you can prove that, your dad is, a temporary resident of Florida. And it's also important to make copies to share with any of the doctors or nurses who ask. I have heard several cases where nurses who are super busy and just don't want to deal with family members will throw up the HIPAA thing. And so it's very important to have those at your fingertips on your phone, for example, so that you could maybe email or text the documents. And then, of course, to have all of these records in your loved one's electronic medical record portals, and probably they have more than one portal. So it's just paperwork like that. I don't know about you, but it's just a lot of stuff, and it can be very confusing. And that's why, obviously, patient advocates are so helpful for sweating all of those details and making sure that all the I's are crossed and the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. Another whole set of forms has to do with needing to have advanced directives in place, and towards the end of life, POLST or MOLST forms. Some states it's called a MOLST, and some it's called a POLST. And for those of you in Colorado, I think, no, in Texas, it's called something entirely different. So um, you might want to look that up if you are from Texas. Probably you already know, but um, if you're giving this presentation in Texas, be sure to bring that up. Or actually, if the loved one lives in Texas, it's really important um, to uh, to dig into what forms are permitted there. And it might even vary by state. It's just that I've heard the most about Texas. So you can assure people that they don't need to go to an attorney to get these things. They can, of course, if they wish. But if they go to a .gov site for their state, they can download almost anything that they need. And the forms can be customized. They're usually PDF forms. And I think if you give them the heads up that TEF issues are raised, it might help prepare them for having sometimes these very difficult conversations. And also to talk about the fact that a lot of the decisions that are reflected in advanced directives, PULSed and MOLSed, and even the medical power of attorney are guided by the patient's values and choices. We have another whole presentation deck on basically how to pick people who are going to be your proxy when you can't speak for yourself or for your own health care. And the key point that we make is the person who is a proxy must have the kind of personality that they can put their own needs and wishes aside and really empathize with their loved one and what they want and stick up for what their loved one wants, which may be at times at odds with what you as the proxy would want for them. But that's the role of the proxy, is to be that person's voice throughout care until the very end, if necessary. But that's another, so you might want to use that as a segue for another talk, is that you can get into more depth about that another time. So how do you support your loved ones for appointments? When you can't go, you can still be there. And we have found, and the last boot camp that we had, this was actually verified by a number of the advocates that were participating, that if your client or your loved one is going to a doctor's appointment on your own and you want to go along with them by FaceTime or an iPad, that it's really helpful to call the office staff in advance to let them know. There are still physicians that have reservations about that and may push back, but the thing to do is to make your case is that you are a help to them. That when a patient goes accompanied by someone else, whether in person or electronically, that they can help make this appointment go more quickly, efficiently for the doctor, because I am the person who's prepared with questions that my loved one is concerned about. And you can take notes so that you can be that extra pair of ears and hands, so that your notes will help make sure that you can go over them afterwards. There will be no confusion, and you won't have to call the office later to ask questions and bother them. And then the last selling point, if you will, is that I can help make sure that my loved one will be in compliance. Now, that is, I think, kind of an icky word, compliant, but that resonates with physicians. And you can use another word, of course, but basically what you're assuring is that if the doctor's advice will be heard, remembered, and more likely to be followed if you are there as part of the conversation. So With your loved one, create a list of questions and topics to cover before any doctor's appointments. List them in order of priority, and then take notes. Or even if you are on FaceTime or iPad, you can hit the record button. It's always a good idea to ask the doctor about recording, and with the assurance, of course, that it just helps your note taking, it helps with compliance, etc. And then, of course, it's the rinse and repeat for every contact with doctors, nurses, or other care providers, is being prepared with your list of questions, priorities, and your emphasis on taking notes to actually spare them from, to make things go more efficiently, and to spare them from having to answer questions later. So it's just a really good formula, and it's a friendly formula. No reasonable doctor's office should object to this, because honestly, it just makes common sense. So supporting your loved one during a hospital stay, when you can't be there, it doesn't mean you don't care. Now, this is and has been trickier. The Pulse of New York has come up with a really great little video, and I hope you can play it and if you don't have internet, and this is a good thing to remember, like if you're going to Rotary Club, for example, and you have the opportunity to test the internet connection in advance, please do that. If you don't, you might want to skip this, because it's really embarrassing if you click on this and there's no connection, which hopefully won't happen now.
Eat this, not that.
Oh, sorry.
All right, let's go over to the nuts section. So,
are you unable to be with your family member or a dear friend while they're in the hospital? Healthcare providers are often overworked and can make a mistake. That's one reason medical errors are a leading cause of death in the United States. If you're told to bring someone with you to the doctor or hospital to get the best care possible, then how can others help if they are not there? Well, maybe they can't be. And there's nothing you need other than what you probably already have. A cell phone. Stay connected 24 hours a day for the duration of the patient's hospital stay with FaceTime, Messenger, or whatever service you have. A doctor who does their rounds and visits the patient at 5 a.m. probably won't wait for the patient to call and get you on the phone. So instead, stay connected at all times. And if you can't, make sure you have a support team so that someone else can be connected when you aren't available. If distance get in the way, constant remote advocacy can be done from anywhere.
Hi, Manny? Are you there? The doctor's here now, and I need those questions that we prepared.
Hi, Mom.
Dr. Feldman, this is my son. We have some questions.
You can put your phone on mute so you don't disturb the patient, and turn off your camera. But they leave their phone open at all times. They can turn off their camera when they want privacy, or have the camera face the ceiling, but it needs to stay close to them in the bed or on their tray table so they can talk to you at any time. Even when sleeping at night, you can leave the phone close by so you can hear when the nurse comes in to check on them, and even talk to the nurse through the open phone line.
Yeah, so she's going to take that 3 times a day? Okay, and then that's going to be for how long?
Staying connected, you can help prepare a list of questions and take notes when the nurse arrives to care for the patient.
I just saw the nurse walk by. When she comes back, could we ask for a full list of my medications?
Sure, I got it. Make sure the patient knows how to properly use the technology. This might mean practicing if someone doesn't use FaceTime or Messenger services often. Also, make sure that everyone involved has access to their own smart device and a charger to ensure a constant connection. It's especially important to stay connected during an exam when most of the conversation happens. As an advocate, you don't want to miss out on important instructions or the chance to ask questions during the live call. The same can work in a doctor's office or rehabilitation center. But staying connected at all times means not missing the important conversation that might be happening because the patient is trying to get you on the phone.
Okay, so that is a video. I will be very interested in hearing what you think about this. I think they did a great job. The only quarrel that I have with them is that they mention medical errors, and that's where Eileen and I part company, because as you know, I don't really like to talk about errors, because it has kind of a blaming tone. Not that doesn't mean I'm, we need to be Pollyanna-ish about this, but we talk about potential cracks in care. That's actually just my preferred verbiage. But that being said, I think that this video is very well done, and it really does, I think, give people a lot to think about, of this constant remote connection to a loved one in the hospital is definitely worth considering. Another way to monitor and to really kind of very subtly set up some accountability, I think, is to buddy up with a nurse for updates and information. And the best thing to do is to call the nurse's station every day at the same time. And the best time is between 2 and 5 o'clock. There are no shift changes going on, and it's a little bit quieter. Try, if you can, to talk to the same nurse each time, just for continuity. And if your loved one is in intensive care, call a second time between 10 and 11 o'clock each night. Wrap up each call with, "I'll call you again tomorrow at the same time," and then, of course, do so. And, of course, also thank them for their time. So the topics to cover about your loved one's care when you do connect with the nurses is to find out about the tests that have been ordered and the results. Why were these tests ordered? What are they looking for? The medications that have been started or stopped, and why for each. Why, or the doses, may have been changed. The vital signs, ask about trends. Are they improving, the same, anything to worry about, or not? Are these good trends, potentially? The daily case conference about your loved one. What was said? What were the doctors reporting? What were the nurses reporting? What were the decisions that were made as a result? And then also for daily rounds with the doctors, ask the nurse if you can possibly join in via iPhone or tablet. That also depends on the nurses knowing when the daily rounds with doctors will occur. They don't always know the exact time, but you can always ask. And then finally, what are their, sort of qualitative assessments of your loved one's spirits? How are they doing? You may have a sense of it yourself because you've been in touch with your loved one by constant remote monitoring or checking in on your own with your own at other times, but it's really good to get another point of view too. Arrange for in arranging for good communication, it's okay to ask for their help. Nurses get this request all the time to help the patient set up a Zoom call, Google Chats, FaceTime. And if the nurses can't do it, there are aides and social workers and case managers that are often willing to help set that up. And as I mentioned before, if ask for the times for the morning rounds. And then also another good time to ask for is it okay to check in after or during the bedside shift changes? Oftentimes, those are at more regular times, the bedside shift changes. So you might be able to be part of that as well remotely. It's important to be mindful of how busy nurses are. These last couple of slides, we've actually given you a ton of questions to ask and topics to cover. So it's really important to also be efficient and to be mindful of their time, but also to express your respect and empathy for their daily challenges by being efficient. And just asking them too, how is your day going? I know you're busy, so I doubly appreciate your update. So again, this bringing an attitude of gratitude and respect to all of your conversations is super important. And then, of course, this is the last one, is these are an acknowledgement there are trying times for everyone. So as part of your attitude of gratitude is after your loved one is discharged, if you can write follow-up thank you notes to those who have helped you, and then also consider writing to the hospital's medical director and CEO to cite any staff members who've been particularly wonderful to you or your loved one. Actually, after my dad passed away, my mom did this. She wrote thank you notes and she wrote notes of recommendations to a whole bunch of people that had taken care of Dad for those 7 months. And in fact, one person received an award as a result of her note. So, those things, I mean, it's just a very positive in life, isn't it? It's spreading good energy. So why don't I wrap up here? This is your slide where you introduce to your audience that this is a good time to chat with you. The final slide is, of course, a thank you to them and to your host. And it's your time to tell them that there are other presentations that you have, and either in person or on Zoom, and to just contact you. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing. Okay, and we can chat ourselves.
Karen, are we approved now to go ahead and start, giving talks if we were able to get them scheduled, or do we need to wait until the end? You probably said this before, but I don't recall.
Oh, no, please go ahead. Oh yeah,
Okay.
whatever you want to do. Yeah. This is actually a good time because in the fall, now we do have one Medicare talk. If you wanted to give that in November, it's not part of your speaker toolkit because that's not part of the, Care Partner Project mission to illuminate Medicare, but it just so happens Gail Bick and I have been doing this talk for 3 years at a local senior center. And so we offer it to you, but you brand it as your own. Do you have any call for Medicare talks in your area? Yeah.
Here, it's always helpful, especially now during Medicare enrollment period coming up. So, but didn't you say that there's an additional charge for that?
Yes. So it's a donation to the Care Partner Project. And I will tell you that, every single year, Gail has set up appointments afterwards. It's generated leads for her to do consulting to help people make their Medicare decisions. So, yeah. So she uses it for that. but
before we purchase it, how much is it?
$50. It's just
Oh,
$50
okay.
donation to the Care Partner Project.
Okay. And I was gonna ask, is that something that we could, it'll probably have to be done one-on-one, but like if I contact you and say, hey, well, can I brief it first to see if it's something that I
Yeah, I'll just send
want to
you
do?
some of the slides. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah,
Okay.
I can't, I really don't have the bandwidth to like go through it. Yeah, so, but I can send you some sample slides. Yeah. In a
Okay.
PDF. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Sure. Just drop me a note. But getting back to this one, yeah, go start anytime. And this particular deck, any questions or ideas or?
I wanted to mention, I am in a vote of, yes, I would. My personal opinion is take the word COVID out of the title somewhere. I feel like there's so much information in here that is, I get why it's linked to COVID, but I know there's so many people who are so tired of seeing the word COVID that if they see a presentation name word COVID as like even marketed, they might not go. And so that's just my feedback. I know you asked in the beginning.
Well,
if
that's
anyone
why
had
I asked, because I'm
Yeah.
personally
Yeah.
weary.
Yeah.
And I didn't know if I was like crazy.
No, I can sense that from people. When you say the word, everyone's just like, oh, it's just an under their breath grumble. Like, I feel like there's such good information in here, and I don't know that has to be related to COVID. You really only had the one slide about, how it has led to just better hygiene. So yes, there's kind of that, you can still tie that into it, but I don't know I don't have any suggestions for how to rename it, but I would vote for taking the name COVID out somewhere. I love the presentation. I think it's great information.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. So thank you.
Karen, my recommendation, I'm probably Nancy, probably gonna say the same thing. Just take out the first sentence. You taking care of your patient from afar. So that, if you can't be at the bedside, just taking care of your patient, because that's what the whole conversation's about.
Yeah. Well, I will certainly, and I noticed when I was going through, it's like, oh, there's a typo there. So this is a very good time for me to correct the title. I will shorten it up. And I think even on those slides, like learnings from COVID, I'll just say something like, this is what we've learned. We've come a long way in the last couple of years, and we've learned a lot about how simple act of washing our hands can protect us. Flu rates are down, COVID's down, it's all part of it. Colds are down.
Now we have the preparing for a hospital stay slide deck, correct? And I know we've seen it. But I'm trying to remember how it differs.
Safe and sound in the hospital. That's actually when you're there. It's
so that's more for the patient, whereas this is more for your loved ones that are far and can't be there with you.
Actually, safe and sound in the hospital is for your loved ones who can be there with you.
Okay. Yeah. No, I like this one a lot too.
Care partners. And this is for the huge reality is that people are alone and don't have family or friends close by.
Thanks.
Yeah. Thank you for asking that question. I'm glad.
And I also agree with getting rid of the word COVID, because as you mentioned, we are moving away from it. And I think that it will probably have more of a negative impact as far as generating interest in the presentation. And it's just not as top of mind for people. They kind of think of it as old news, even though it is still lingering. And then some people are just tired of hearing it because they've had such a negative impact from COVID.
Yeah.
So I'm all for getting rid of that word if we can.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Will do. I'll get rid of it on the deck and the description on the website. So thank you. Others? Ideas? These are all great. Oh,
I don't have any other suggestions. I just want to thank you. I actually kind of look forward to these Friday sessions to just like get this overview of how you engage with these talks. So I appreciate it.
thank you so much. Well, I look forward to them too. It's very fun. So I think so. I'm just going to make another little plug. This deck, it was a result of task force. And then we, our pregnancy and childbirth checklist came about from our task force work. Tammy, you've been on several task force meetings. Our deck about hospice and palliative care, which is ready to go into the speaker toolkit shortly, and which we have a page on the website. So I had been leading the task force, but as you can tell, the way I'm stumbling, I'm like totally overwhelmed. And so, but it's such important work. So we now have 2 co-chairs. Angie Galatis and Kathy Lovett will be contacting you to see if you would like to participate in the task force. And it's just once a month for an hour. And it's like, we get in Tammy, we get things done. So that just, watch out for, they'll be sending you a note, I'm sure, to ask you if you want to participate.
And what kinds of things do you go over? New topics that you might want to address, old slide decks that need revised, things like that?
It's new topics and everybody votes. So,
Okay.
like for hospice and palliative care, that one, I can't remember what the other topics we were considering, but as it turned out, that was a great one, because when we got together to talk about it, and it's all with the goal of like, how are we going to create another checklist, that's very consistent with everything else we do. And we were like, oh my gosh, we're as confused as anybody else. So,
I'd be willing. Yeah, I'd go for that. It sounds like something I would like to do.
yeah.
I would as well. Me too. You can put me on the list.
Well, like I said, I'm out of it now. So I'm happy to turn it over to Kathy and Angie, who are fantastic. And just watch for a note from them and raise your hand.
Okay.
Darlene, we have to audition.
Oh gosh, no.
I have an idea. We'll do great.
There's no, it's like, hooray for anybody who shows up. That's all that matters.
All right.
It's just a way of there's a lot of wisdom. There's a lot of experience in this group. And so it's just putting it all together. So, okay. Well, if there's somebody had something in chat, let me look to see who is that. Oh, Nancy had to go. She said bye. Okay. All right. So, call me or drop me a note anytime if anything comes up you want to chat about. Okay.
Thank you, Karen.
Okay. Thanks, Karen.
Thanks,
Bye,
Karen.
everybody.
Thanks. Take
See
care.
you next week.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.